Well, thanks for joining me this afternoon. I'm excited to kind of get into the basics. So this is really Canva basics, kind of setting the level straight, making sure everybody's kind of on the same page. And hopefully the takeaway from this is we'll be able to launch into a whole bunch of other stuff. So through this like basic kind of getting a base level of things, hopefully it'll then open up a whole bunch of doors for you that maybe you either were hesitant to get into or weren't exactly sure where to start, and then make Canva so much easier for you moving forward. I haven't met you before. My name is Nathan Wells. I work for Phygital Labs, and we offer PD around Canva education. We're a Canva training partner, but we also do a lot in AI, in physical learning. Hence, the word phygital came from physical and digital together. And we do a lot of computational thinking workshops. My colleague Becky was just at FETC in Orlando doing a lot of conference sessions there, and that was some of what she did while there. And we're going to jump right in so that we have the full time together. Our main three things is navigation, using something that's already there and make it useful for what you have to teach. So taking advantage of that template library, and then getting in some basic design principles. And the hope there is that when we're going in and we're designing, we're editing a template, you know really easily what's available to you, and you can make it adapted for what you need. You can jump in and make something really engaging and easy to watch and follow. So that's kind of where we're going in our 30 minutes together. So the main thing to understand is the homepage, and the homepage has changed even just since October. So even just in the last 4 months, 3 months, we have had this update in October, made things a lot easier. And really, if you understand the homepage, you really don't need to know some of the other things when it comes to navigation, specifically projects and templates I'm going to point out. But you can now, since October, do all of that from right here on this screen. And what I mean by that is when you're on the homepage, you have access to some really quick and easy things. So I'm just going to grab a color here. Um, some being your design. So right here is your design. And that allows you to look through everything, do a search with a bar right underneath it that has to do with everything that you have used before in the system. Next to that is templates. And templates, same thing, you're going to use this search bar here, allows you to look through everything that's in the Canva library. And so that's something that is easy to jump in, easy to get started and get going. And so we're going to look quickly at some of this. So we're on the homepage right now. From the homepage, I just want to point out two quick things. One is the create button. And the create button is basically going to pull up a menu that has all of these icons and a little bit more detail about each one, and some templates that go with each one. They're just like main templates, not all the specifics, just main templates. And then also classwork. Now, we are not going to get into classwork today. And I want to point out something else. If you don't see classwork and that left-hand navigation, you're probably not signed in with your educator account. So that's something I see. One of the beautiful things, I'm going to switch to my live Canva account real quick, the other internet tab I've opened. One of the beautiful things about Canva is they've made it really easy to switch back and forth between accounts, which is wonderful. It can also make it confusing sometimes if you're not used to it. So I just want to point that out. At the bottom left, you'll see this little icon. It should be, or could be a picture of you, could be your initials. A lot of times I'll just see like the first initial. So for me, it's an N there as well. And there we go. With that, sometimes people will click on their education account and have it switched to personal. And so if you already had, like myself, a Canva consumer account before your educator account, or even after, and you ever have switched on purpose or accident, just make sure for education stuff that you are switched over. So it's real easy. See, I'm under Teams. I can switch between my personal and my school team. Mine says Phygital Labs. Yours will say whatever school organization you're a part of. And then you also can switch and add accounts here. So just make sure that you're in your educator account if you ever don't see that classwork option. Now, classwork is something, as I said, we're not going to get into today, but it really makes things for you that are simple and quick and easy. You can give it, here's what I'm teaching, here's the main things that I'm covering, and it will help create some learning activities to help you kind of get jump started. Even more so than templates. It actually will create text for you and images, activities to go along with that. So super powerful tool. Not going to get into that today, but I just wanted to point it out. So again, I'm on my home page here. These down here are the most recent, second half of my page towards the bottom. These are my most recent projects, my most recent things I've worked in. And it can be any type of material, a presentation, a doc, a whiteboard, a social media graphic, photo, anything will pop up in recent in the order I worked in them. From the top, I want to point out though, if I click on your designs, that's the default usually, I can also use this now to search. You notice the expanded gives me the ways that I can search, and I can kind of narrow those down, filter. But if I use search to just bring up things that I'm working on, so as I start to type in cell, you can see everything I've worked on that has to do with biology, cellular biology, right? And these are different lessons and different types of activities. I can also narrow that though to just presentations. And so now it's just the presentation that has to do with cells. So that's your designs. Templates from here is super powerful, even it just keeps getting better. It just keeps getting better. And specifically the education side keeps getting better. The education specific material in Canva is only 5 years old. They just released it in 2020. And so it's really just, I mean, not even 6 years old yet. It hasn't been around a while, but man, is it blown up. And there's just so many options in there, which is pretty amazing. So you can search for just about anything you need. So I was already talking about cells, so I'm just going to use that as an example. And you'll see all these presentations. This is an infographic here in the center of my screen. You can see there's, this one looks like another infographic. This one might be a document. I'd have to click on it and then I can tell. Yeah, so this one's like a printable instead of a document, it's a printable poster. And so that one's a lot of times used for infographics. Lots of presentations. Here's a document. So this is like a worksheet I could print out. That's already there. So you could see and kind of click around and see, oh, is these something I need? And you notice every time I click on one, it gives me a preview. And I can kind of click through and see if it's interesting. And then if I want to use it, I can click customize this template. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. So suggest that you play around with templates. I'm not going to click on Canva AI today. That's a whole separate hour and plus training. It is super powerful. It will create images, documents, presentations for you, educational materials based on what you ask it to do. So highly recommend that you either check out previous trainings I've done with our Digital Labs YouTube channel, and love to talk more about how we can do that as a training for you too. So now I'm going to go to the left-hand navigation and talk about some of those things we were already in. So you'll notice if I click projects, now the top has changed a little bit and it's only focused on projects I've worked on before. A couple of things that I'm going to go back to the presentation. I see overlooked with projects a lot is starting from here and doing two things. First is creating folders. That is one of the most underutilized things I've seen in Canva. So if you've been using Canva for any length of time, you're going to start having lots of projects really quickly. And it's funny, I kind of laugh about it. I feel like in any other circumstance, our Google Drive, our OneDrive, our computer documents folder, we're used to creating folders. That's what we've always done. But for whatever reason, that's not a natural thing a lot of people do in Canva. So I like to point that out. Use folders to organize yourself, just like you use folders in any other way. And then speaking of those other systems, you can also, there it is, import from another system that you have your educator account connected to. For instance, you're a Google Education school, you can connect it to Google Drive, And then you can open stuff from your Google Drive in Canva without having to like download, upload, copy, paste, like all of that. You can just open it right in Canva and it works really smoothly. Same thing if you're a Microsoft school, you can do it for OneDrive, or if you happen to use Dropbox, you can do that. So whatever you already are signing in with your educator account, you can now add that and be able to drop it right in here, which makes it so easy and really, really quick to be able to grab those and use those in whatever you're doing. So I wanted to call that out. The other thing, there we go. Somehow I got mixed there. I dropped in, and I'm not going to do this as a group right now because we have limited time, but I could share this presentation with you and you could interact with this poll, even if it was a view-only poll or a view-only presentation, which is what I would usually suggest for sharing things with students. You can still interact with this poll or quiz. You can make quiz questions. Now, these are not going to replace a Google form quiz, an LMS, more formal quiz that you've created. But for one question at a time, quick checks for understanding, quick exit tickets, these are so easy to create and drop them into your presentation so that you can keep kids engaged, keep checking in with them throughout a class or throughout a unit that you're working on. So I can click an answer and click submit, and then it will save that. And as an educator, I can see, I'm just going to X out of this and show you. Whenever I click on this, I can see responses. So you notice what I did. I clicked right where the questions are, clicked right on that box, and I can go to responses, and I can see, oh, one person responded at 4. I can view those responses. I can see who it is, and you'll notice mine says anonymous. Now, if I go to edit, one of the options I have in settings, and again, I'm not going to go into a full training just on creating forms right now, but just to give you a quick heads up, when I'm in the settings, I can set that, collect names or not. And the reason I point that out is I think it's important if we're going to be looking at the data as a class. So I'm going to have everybody respond. And then as a class, I'm going to come in and say, hey, let's see what everybody did. We're going to look at the responses together. Well, right here, instead of anonymous, it would say in Wells. It would put the student's name, however they're in your system. If your students are user IDs are what they use instead of like a name, that's what would show up. So whatever your student emails start with, that's what's going to show up right there. And so sometimes you may not want that to show up because you want to be able to look at the data together as a class. So just be thinking about that. So again, I went into edit after I clicked on the question itself, and I can change what type of question it is. I can change, how it's set up, and then that's where I can get this. And I found these in elements. And we're going to talk about elements a little bit more in a moment. But from here, if I scroll down, you'll see forms as an option. And then there's all kinds of templates in here. And I just picked a real basic one to show as an example. So that's where I got that from. That's in elements. We're going to come back to elements in a moment. And then I added that question. So this is a great time. I could have checked in with all of you. It would have been really helpful to kind of see who's done this before and who hasn't. But in this case, we're just going to kind of keep moving along because we have a short time together. All right, the other thing that we can look at is templates. Now, I kind of showed this from the home page, so let's go back. So remember on the home page, I clicked that center tab or icon that says templates, and I can search for cells. It's the one I did. You can see they have some suggested ones by type of project, or I can scroll down and see kind of what just pops up. And these are usually geared towards what have you used before? Now you notice they also have a what's new section. They have a trending, which is kind of funny. But this usually is based on things you've done before. So I 100% can say these are all examples I use all the time. Volcanoes and history. I was a social studies teacher, middle school and high school social studies teacher. So I use history a lot as examples. Reproductive, body structure, cellular structure are things I use a lot as examples. So you can see those popping up here in my example. So if you were searching, if you taught, 4th grade and you were looking for some story starters, next time you came in, you'd see some of those. So that's what this is for. And then of course you can search at the top. When I go to the left-hand side and click on templates, you notice nothing happens. So I'm on the home page and click templates. Let's go back to the home page and then click templates here. It's the same thing. So I wonder if they may get rid of that little button. I'm even going to just unpin it. I don't know if you saw what I did there. When I click on templates, it's down here at the bottom. I can pin it to make it easy to get to, or I can unpin it. So that's an update that's just come out in the last month or so. But it makes it easy to just search from templates no matter where you're starting over here on the left. So that makes it nice. Now, I would encourage you, if you're at all the type of person that's just clicking along, as I am, if you're following on your own screen, find a template real quick that works for you. It does not have to be something serious. Make it be a fun thing, a fun topic. You know, you enjoy knitting, you enjoy, I was talking about hiking before we started the call. You know, whatever it is, you can find something really quick because I just want to show some things in the elements library. And so I'm going to do that. So I'm going to go back to my cellular example. So I'm going to go to cells, I'm going to find something. Oh, let's try this one. Okay. It has a lot of animations in it, so I'm going to skip that one just for the sake of what we're doing. And you'll notice when I click on a presentation, I can see the slides, but I can also scroll down and see others that are similar to it. That can be really helpful sometimes as well when we're looking at templates. It's like, oh, this one's close. I wish it had. And then you can scroll down and maybe find something that does have more what you're looking for. Let's see, this one's kind of cool. All right. Look, one more. It's kind of cool. So maybe you're looking as well on your side. Get a little outside of just basic cells here, but that's all right. It's microbiology got in there. What's the matter? That's clever. Emotions. See, I'm getting way off here. That's okay. I'm going to go back to the home page. I'm actually looking for something specific because it makes it easier to show in the elements library. So that's why I'm taking just a second here to make sure I find one. And the one I had used when I was prepping is not popping up. All right, so I'm just going to use this one that says human stem cells. And when I'm ready to use a template, I'm going to use the customize this template button. And it's going to open it up. If you notice in my internet browser, there's the original tab. It just opened a new tab and automatically launched it in what we call the editor. So in the editor, I can see all my slides across the bottom. A little bit different if you're used to PowerPoint or Google Drive, Google Slides. The slides go across the bottom. And then the left-hand navigation now are things I can do with that presentation or do in that presentation. For example, let's go back to elements. So when I click on elements, it'll stay open. If I click this little collapse button, it'll fold. I'm going to click on it. And I can see the categories here of things I can add. That's what elements are, things I can add to this presentation. So I can do a search at the top. I can actually generate an image from right there, AI, just an AI generated image. Or I can click on a category down below. So let's start here. I want let's see, I'm going to pick one and get a baby. And when I hit enter on my keyboard, you can see graphics, photos, audio, and videos for this one. I can also generate an image as well. I do want to give it a little bit more specific description if I was going to do that. So let's grab this little guy. Since we're talking about stem cells, little ones sometimes are involved in that discussion, but not always. Depends on what you're doing with stem cells. So that's a way I can bring in an image. It could also be, I'm going to exit out. You see the little X beside the word baby. I can also just go back and grab a shape. Sometimes I find that, for instance, what are embryonic stem cells? That is actually on a shape. And that's how they made that stand out and made this a little bit easier of a slide to look at. Is they differentiated the two text boxes by putting them on a shape that has some dimension to it and some color. And you'll notice the dimension I'm speaking of is, you notice how the tan one is a little bit bigger than the color is that? It's like a greenish blue. Sure, cyan. There we go. So the cyan one, kind of greenish blue one, is a little bit smaller. That's one of those design elements that helps students follow along more easily. It's not just pretty, right? Like it actually has a purpose. And in this instance, it's to kind of give dimension to the slide, seem like one thing is coming out of at you a little bit more and standing out. In this instance, the question, and then the actual definition, or what we might answer that question with, is on this tan one. So the way you can do that is, you notice in the basic shape column or row here, I have one that has curved edges, or curved corners rather. And so I can drag this around until I get the size I want. And then because I'm clicked on it, you notice my options change when I click away from it. When I click on that shape, I have font options, because this also, all of your basic shapes are also text boxes. So I can just double click in it and start typing. But then I also can choose the stroke would be like the outside, the border. And I'm going to click none, the color. And the color is really nice because it automatically grabs the document colors. In this instance, it's going to look at all the slides and say, hey, here's the colors that are used. Do you want to use one of those? And I'm like, great, that's fantastic. I'm going to use this one. Or I can pick kind of the default colors that are just part of the system. So that's another way you could do that. I actually really like, yeah, maybe this a little bit, just for some contrast between what's already on the slide. And you notice I'm in front of the baby. I can click on position and I can move it backwards. So it kind of stands out. So those are just some quick basics to show you kind of how you can use some shapes and how you can add in some images. Now, these are all really simple to do. And just like any basic text editor, I can change the font size. I can change font color, bold, italic, underline, all that kind of stuff. And I'll let you play with those kind of things. I'm not going to get into that right now. But I wanted to point out that you can do all of that. So we found a template. We got into the editor. Is there any quick questions? I have a couple minutes here and just want to make sure, for those of you that are with me live, if there's any questions you have, like, oh, I saw this, but I don't know what it means, or how did you do that, or what does this word on your screen right now mean? Love to try to answer those really quickly. Just drop those into the chat if you have access. And while I'm waiting for you to do that, I'm just going to point out the left-hand navigation. The other thing is at the top left is design. So at any point, if you want to reuse another slide, you can. You notice that which slide I'm currently clicked on, slide 6. If I wanted to insert one, if I click the plus, it's going to overdo slide 6. That's something to be careful with. That frustrated me the first few times. So I'm going to Control Z on my keyboard. And instead, I'm going to hover between the slides. You notice what I did there? I'm just taking my mouse and hovering between slides, and it gives me a blank one. Then I can click on that template over here, and it'll add it in between them. So slide 6 is now 7, and I can just click and drag. So now it's back to 6. Did not do 6, 7 on purpose. Apologize. Have you used a flow chart in a slide? Where would I get that? Yeah, great question. So I'm going to hover over, I'm going to go to a way different slide. I'm going to hover over in between slides 3 and 4. And in elements, and I hope this is what you're getting at when you say flow charts, is I'm going to click on charts. And in charts, you have all kinds of different ones. They have a ton of different options. I'm going to stick to the basics real quick. I'm just going to grab a bar chart. I'm going to do a stacked bar chart. And from here, you notice it automatically opened up the left-hand kind of pop out here where I can edit my data. I can change the colors. I can change the name. So I'm going to label each of the sides of the axis, right? And the headings and the colors up here. So I'm going to change these to the colors out of my document. Let's grab that one and maybe that one. So now I have these differentiating colors. And when I click on this again and click edit, just like when I was talking about editing the form question, it pops the left-hand navigation back. And now I can go in and I can change numbers. I can, edit this. That's a little off, isn't it? Let's not do that. Let's do 12. And then this maybe instead is 15. This one's 25 or 24, right? Whatever. So I can change those, and you notice how it changes the outcome and it moves those around in real time. I can also, though, import the data. So if I already have a Google Sheet, if I already have a CSV or an XLSX, which is a Microsoft Excel, I can upload those as well if you wanted to do that. Or I can just copy and paste the rows from somewhere else if I have those. I can change the labels. If you go into customize, there's a lot you can do in here. I'm not going to get into all of that right now for our time's sake, but there's a lot you can do in here. So let me know if that's what you were looking for, if you had a different question, but hopefully that answers your question. So that was again in elements. And then I went down to charts. And then I could start with clicking on one of these charts, or I can just start with data and then choose the chart that goes best with the data I've chosen. So that's one way you could do that. Any other questions for those of you that are with me live? And again, while I'm waiting, I'm just going to show one other thing. So I pointed out design and elements. Underneath that is text. So if you have like, yeah, I know this is going to be a big heading. I can just start from there and just start with this is chart 1, whatever, right? And it has a default font, default size. It's always bolded when I click heading 1. So you can start with stuff like that. You also have Magic Write. I'm not going to get into all the magic editing tools, but just know Magic Write is like a ChatGPT built into Canva. They actually work with Claude, is the AI that they use in the back end. And what that means is you can give it a prompt and it's going to write it for you, which is maybe great for writing lesson plans. But just know by default, if your school, your district, organization is set up with a Canva consultant, which is free to do, it's all free, your students will be in a separate org, meaning Canva Write will not be available to them. They will have some of the other magic tools like Magic Edit, Background Remover, Voice. There are different tools that are really cool and fun for design. We're not getting into in this session, but Magic Write will not be there. I just always want to clarify that. The other things you'll see on the left-hand side here that I use a lot, just as examples, is like upload. So if I'm linked to my Google Drive or something else, that will be there. These are all images I've added. So here's a cactus I added. So that's where that came from, is I uploaded it from my device. And then projects, these are what we mentioned before, projects and folders, places that I've worked in before. And then there's some apps. And we're not going to get into apps today, but just know if you ever look at apps, always look for the ones from Canva first, because those are going to be the most streamlined. They're not going to ask you to sign in to a third party. They're not going to do any of that kind of stuff. It's already a part of the system. So always look at the ones from Canva before you look at anywhere else. One I like to mention that's not immediately on this. Oh, two. One is Translate, really decent translator built into here. So take advantage of that. The other one is a QR code generator. That didn't pop up right away. So I'm just going to type in QR code. And this very first one, it's the most plain looking one. It's only black and white, really simple. That's the one from Canva. And so when I click on that, I can even see by the 3 dots created by Canva. And it'll create a QR code for you, which could be helpful depending on what you're doing. Especially I think like parent nights or sending out a newsletter to families, QR codes can be helpful. All right, this has been just a quick run through for you all. I want to call out, and I'll send this in the follow-up, Canva for Education. This is a fantastic resource page created by the Canva Education team. If you didn't know this, they're actually based in Austin, Texas, and they do a fantastic job of putting together good resources for educators. And they're updating this all the time. There's all kinds of tutorials, courses, activities, cheat sheets. The cheat sheets is what I usually call out to folks. This is like, I don't remember how to use the video editor. Well, there's a whole cheat sheet that walks you through the basics of where to click to do the basics of the video editor, for example. So that's a great one. The other resource I want to point out is the online community. Now it is through Facebook, so this is probably going to be blocked at your campus, depending on your school, but it's something that is a great resource. I see people using this all the time. I'm not logged in this browser, so I can't see the whole thing, but it is constantly used, and it's international. So you'll see folks posting ideas, projects, asking questions that the community answers just amongst itself. Sometimes webinars are posted in there. Really great resource as well. And so I'll send those in the follow-up. This one I'll drop in the chat for those of you that are live. But those are great resources. And then love to stay connected with you. So you can feel free to connect with us on all the different social platforms that we work with, but then also love to have you subscribe to our newsletter. Some of you may have found out about this webinar through either one of our social channels or our newsletter. But if you're not, those are great ways to stay connected. Again, my name is Nathan. Great to connect with you all today. Thanks for hanging out with me for a few minutes, and hopefully that helped you get started with Canva for Education. Take care, everybody. Thanks.